Hi everyone, thank you for joining me on Her Art from the Attic. Today we are going to learn how to paint fuchsias. This is part of our How to Paint Flowers series. I have previously painted the background. That's a different tutorial called How to Paint a Rustic Light Brown Background. I'll put a link for that in the description below. Otherwise, let's just get started. Begin by pulling in some green and black together and mixing them up on your palette. This will give you a nice dark green. Then with a very tiny flat edge brush, you're going to use that green color that you mixed up and you're going to pull a line across your canvas, starting at about 3/4 of the way down on one side and going up to 1/4 of the way down or 1/3 of the way down on the top of the other side. This will be the base of your vine. Now we're going to grab some of that same green-black color and we're just going to outline the entire painting. I'm going to start with leaves here, and some of my leaves are going to hang over, some will go up. These leaves are kind of wavy. And now down here I'm going to paint the stem with some of the bulbs coming off of them. Again, just the outline and fill it in. You want to make the stems thinner than the main vine, and then the bulbs, just make them an almond shape coming off the end. Now I'm just going to sporadically add more bulbs and leaves and fill them in with that green base coat. Now, coming off of the end of this stem, I'm actually going to paint my first blossom. We're going to do a big round bulb and then some of the petals flowing off of them. And you just want the petals to come off in a pointed shape at the end. As the paint that I previously painted has dried, I'm going to just keep adding layers. And I do this throughout the whole painting. Now I'm just going to go add some more blossoms just like I did the last one. Now I am going to mix some yellow and green, and I am going to brighten up some of the leaves that I've laid down. So my light source is coming from the middle, so I want the bright part of my leaves to be facing that, and I'm just going to line the edge and pull it into the green that I laid down, blending it in just to brighten up those leaves. I'm making sure that I'm not pulling it into the very end. Now I'm going to pull some along the middle there, and I'm going to make sure that I don't cover up my shadow there because I want my leaf to look bent and wavy, and having the different shades and brightnesses and highlights will help you get this illusion. And I'm going to wisp some out from the center into the leaf, and I'm going to create a few lines of the creases and veins of the leaves. Now I'm pulling some white into the green, the yellow green that I had previously mixed, and I'm going to brighten up my leaf even more on the very edges. Just pulling it into that color, not over mixing it. Emphasizing the lines that I had laid down in the leaves. Now I'm going to use a very tiny liner brush to get some fine lines and details into my leaves, just dragging through the leaves. And these lighter lines, these light thin lines, are really going to make it look like the ridges of those leaves are popping up at you. Okay, so just go ahead and do this to all of your leaves. Now I'm going to grab some violet on my brush, and I'm also going to pull some white into that, mix it up, and then I'm going to use this color here. It's kind of a pink color. I am going to use this and pull it through all of my stems. Now I want a very thin layer of this, so I'm watering it down a tiny bit, and I'm going to pull it through, making sure I leave some of the dark green showing on both sides. Again, don't put too much of this color on, and if you need to add more dark green, like if you cover it up, go ahead and do that. I'm using my very small flat tip brush to do this. So pulling it through the vine, the stems that go in the leaves, the stems that go into the fuchsia blossoms, to give it that pop of color that's so beautiful in this plant. Now I'm just going to grab some bright crimson red on that same brush there. I'm going to emphasize a little bit more on some of those stems, and now I'm going to pull it through the bottom of my leaves. Now I'm grabbing violet and I'm going to pull it through the bottom of my big blossoms, the bulby part, and I'm just kind of pulling it, brushing it swiftly into the base of that blossom. And I'll do that on every single blossom. We're just beginning to lay down the base colors. You go layer upon layer upon layer, and if you begin with the end in mind, then you can go a layer here, go do something else, come back when it's dried and do the next layer, etc. Now I'm pulling that same violet through the little buds of the fuchsias that haven't opened yet. Now I'm getting some crimson red, and I'm going to pull it through the little bulbous parts of the blossom where the blossom meets the stem, just dragging some red through that. Now I'm going to take that same crimson red and I'm going to pull it over my outer petals of my fuchsia blossom. And just do that to all of them. Now I'm skipping ahead just a tiny bit because I wanted to practice on that middle blossom. But what I want you to do is grab some purple and white, mix it up, some dark purple and white, and you're going to pull it through the main blossom there, and start from the base and pull it through to the bottom, leaving some of the darker purple shading the bottom there of your bulb, that middle bulbous part. I'm going to pull a little bit more of the brighter color through. And you can see that I'm following the curve of the bulb as I'm painting. This will help it make it look nice and rounded. Now I'm just pulling some straight white through that, although I didn't wipe off my brush first so that it could just continue to mix as I'm painting. I'm pulling some darker where I want to re-emphasize the shadow that maybe I covered up too much, or just want to blend a little bit more with that brighter color. Pulling some brighter into that second flower there. Now I'm going to grab some violet and going to pull that through, starting at the base of the bulb, working toward the end, but wisping my brush off as I come down to the highlighted purple part that I just did. Just wisping it right off. Again, follow the curvature of the bulb. You'll notice too that as I go between colors, I wipe the excess paint off of my brush onto a paper towel, but I never wash off the brush. This will just help the colors mix a little bit more nicely, pulling all the colors that I've used into each other. And I'm just going to keep using all those colors that I just used, purple and white and violet, and I'm going to emphasize that bulb until it looks nice and round. The middle part I want to be a little brighter because that will be the part of the bulb that protrudes the most, and so the light's going to reflect off of it more. Now while I'm waiting for those to dry, I'm going to put some red on that same brush, and I'm going to pull it through the bulbs that I've painted. Just adding a little bit more pop of color onto those. Now I'm mixing a little red and white to get some pink, and I'm going to brighten up my bulbs Using a similar technique that I've been using on the blossoms, the lighter part of these buds are going to emphasize the most protruding part of the bud itself, and the little bulbous parts by where the stem meets the bud. So adding highlights and shadows throughout all of those. Now I am going to pull some of the green-black paint onto my brush, and I'm going to repaint the petals that come over the bulbous part of the blossom, the big bulbous part. I'm going to paint those over, so basically I'm making like long almond shape petals. So just go ahead and do this to the other blossom too. Keep in mind that we're trying to make these two blossoms look like the one in the middle that I've already painted. When you go paint this at home, just use the same steps we've used to paint that one in the middle yourself. Okay? Now I'm going to get a tiny, tiny liner brush, pull some red thinly on it, and I'm going to drag it down from the center of the bottom of the bulb, and I'm going to kind of fan these lines outward. Again, just very, very delicately. The harder you push on your brush, the thicker the lines will be. And we want these lines to be very thin. If you need to water it down to make the paint a little thinner, go ahead and do that. Not too much water, just a little bit. Now grab some yellow ochre on your liner brush, and we're going to paint little tiny dots at the end of every line that we just painted down. Now I'm going to put a teeny bit of red on my liner brush, and you're going to paint a thicker yet still delicate line straight from the center down, a little bit longer than the rest, and then just paint a little dot at the end of that. I'm going to get some white on the point of my liner brush and emphasize the highlight in the bottom of that little dot that I just did. Now I'm pulling some red back in, just giving it a little bit of dimension and depth, pulling the colors into each other. I've got more red on the very bottom, and then a little highlight in the middle, and then red being pulled from that long line into the dot. I'm taking some darker purple and putting it at the base of that line where it meets the bulb, and just pulling it down, adding some more shadows throughout that. Now I'm going to get some white on the tip, and I'm going to just emphasize the tops of those little dots that I just laid down, letting the ochre, yellow ochre, show through the bottom still. Now I'm pulling in some violet and some red, and making that dot at the long, that's coming off of the long line, nice and colorful, pulling some of those colors through the line also. Now if you need to be looking at a photo or an actual fuchsia plant to reference what you're doing, I suggest that. Watering down some of those colors, pulling them through. blending them. I'm darkening up some of those lines, connecting all those colors by blending just delicately and slightly. Now go and do this to every blossom. Now I've got some red on my tiny flat brush, and I'm going to pull it through the petals. Remember the green that we had laid down? We're going to pull the red over the top of that. You'll notice how the green just automatically gives it depth underneath. I didn't even do anything fancy. I'm just painting right over the top of it. Top of the lines that I already drew and filled in. Now I'm going to mix up a little bit more white and red to get a nice soft pink color, and I'm going to brighten up some of the lines of those petals on the outside toward the center, and I'm going to leave a tiny line of the darker color facing the middle on the edge of my petal there. Again, if you need to thin down your paint with a little bit of water to help blend these colors into each other, go ahead and do that. Brightening up again, following the roundness of the shape of my petal. This will help make the petal look round. It sounds simple enough. It's amazing how often that doesn't get done. Make sure your strokes follow the shape of whatever you're painting. I just put down some darker shadowing using red and green, if you saw that, because I had accidentally covered it up. I'm just getting more of these colors, pulling some red through to make it look just nice and vibrant. I want the petals to look red, not pink so much. The pink is just a highlight. So if it looks too pink, add a little bit more crimson. So guys, as we're wrapping up, I just want to thank you so much for watching. I love fuchsias. I think they're beautiful. Every time I see them, they just bring joy to me. Anyway, give me a thumbs up if you liked this tutorial. Let me know if you have any ideas for flowers you'd like to see painted. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share your projects with me on my Facebook page. If you just type in Her Art from the Attic, will pop right up. You can also follow me on Instagram, and if you want to adopt a painting, you can find lots of paintings to adopt on herartfromtheattic.com. Alright everybody, have just a wonderful, bright, cheerful day. Bye!